Hello! Welcome to my channel. I am Raina, your friendly neighborhood witch of what the f. I'm a musician, an artist, and as of late, an extremely manic crafter. Check these out. I'm making, as it falls right out of my ear. Been making jewelry, so this will be fun. Not quite done, but you know, felt like wearing them for the video today. Today, I am showing you, it was a gift from a best friend for Christmas. It is a painting that I have embellished with clay and mounted on a frame, and I'm gonna show you kind of how I did it from beginning to end. So, enjoy. Here's part one, the painting. I'm using 5 colors for this project. The little tub is Jacquard Pearl X in antique silver. That is a pigment. The rest are DecoArt Extreme Sheen craft paints. I've got sterling silver, champagne gold, antique bronze, and obsidian. I'm painting using the Shelee art style. Here's a fail. My first draft really didn't turn out at all. What I'm painting on is a craft round that I found at Hobby Lobby. It's a baseball. So the fail was that I painted with this side up. This is laser cut. It feels completely even, but the stitches actually showed through. That's not the only problem with the first draft, but flip it over. It's fairly decent. It's a little on the flimsy side, so it may warp on you, but mine did not warp on me, and I kept it flat, and it ended up great and finished. So, you know, there's your $4 canvas. This is black pillow paint. ColorPlace by Walmart. And I'm layering the colors one by one, starting with the obsidian and a little bit of the antique silver. This is the sterling silver, champagne gold, more of the antique silver, antique bronze, and finishing it off with a little bit more obsidian. I wanted this to be really black heavy. Now I'm swiping. I've applied cell activator directly to these playing cards and I'm just doing my thing. As I mentioned, I use the Shelee art style for painting, and that's specific to acrylic pour painting to get these really amazing cells. And the Shelee art style, it's a whole different set of recipes for the pouring medium, for the paints, for pigments, and for the cell activators. And it's not the normal, you know, Floetrol and glue stuff that a lot of the acrylic pourers are doing. This is a totally different style. If you are not familiar with it, don't know the recipes, or interested, check the link below. There is a 15% off coupon to take the class. I highly recommend it if you are into acrylic pour painting because you will learn so much. For me, it is the best investment I've made towards my revamped art career, and it's really not that much money, so go for it. Fun note, this was actually version 2. This is not, I'm sure as you've seen the thumbnail, this is not the painting that ended up being in the artwork, but this is the one directly before it. It's the same colors and the same technique. I just swiped from kind of side to side across the bottom of the round and across the top rather than working from the middle and swiping out. But this is how it's done. I will link below a video if you want to see how I kind of do the negative space swiping. When I actually made the final painting, I either forgot to hit record or I was so frustrated after failing several times that I just didn't. Not real sure which, but I will show you the final. I don't even have a video of it, it's just a photograph, so it's okay, you'll see it a couple of times. There it is, the beautiful final version. I used an extra amount of pillow paint to get that texturing in there. That is not different colors of paint, that is waves. That is waves in the paint. And as thick as I layered it on this weird little baseball thing, it didn't warp. So either I'm just really, really lucky or these things are stronger than they look. Part 2, the ouroboros. And yes, I know some people say ouroboros. I heard ouroboros in the audiobooks of Discovery of Witches, and I feel like they know more than I do, so ouroboros it is. Word to the wise, condition your clay. I didn't. When I was a kid, I would play with polymer clay all the time. I made roses, I made animals, I made all sorts of things. That's like 20 some years ago, and I completely forgot the part about conditioning. So I picked up this Kato clay and I just started rolling with it, and I mean, the stuff has a consistency of nasty cheddar, like the grossest grocery store cheddar that kind of breaks apart. And I mean, if it were cheese, you wouldn't eat it. And if it's clay, I mean, I had the same reaction. I really didn't want to work with it, but I was on a deadline and that's what I had. And I was just not gonna go out to the craft store at that time of night. I mean, I think they were closed anyway. So this is what I had and this is what I did, but man, I wish I had remembered that part about conditioning, because this snake would have turned out a lot better. It's lumpy. So I just joked that it ate a few rats before I baked it. I rolled it out in one big piece, shoved the tail in the face, and off we went. I took the limp snake. Sounds so wrong. I took the limp snake. Let's try this again. I took this baseball, this one in my hands, and I wrapped it in tin foil. Then I took, much to his behest, my husband's pizza stone, because it was the only circle-y thing big enough that would go in the oven. I covered that in tin foil. I then laid this on top of that, and I wrapped the snake around this to bake. And I did that because clay shrinks in the oven. So I needed it to fit this as best as possible to keep its shape even as it shrunk. Now, it shrank, so though it looks whole here, where I put the tail into the mouth actually separated. It broke a little bit. I was not too worried about it. I knew I could fix it in the end, but just know that your clay shrinks. So if you're gonna do something like this, like making a ouroboros, and you want it to be perfectly circular, you need to bake it around some sort of form. Also, before I baked it, I took toothpicks, I cut them in half, and I shoved them up into the jaw to make fangs, knowing I would super glue them in when all was said and done. Here it is post-baking. This is a translucent clay. I didn't use anything colored because I knew I was gonna paint it anyway. And paint I did. I used some Amsterdam black and gave it a whole coat, 2 coats, probably even 3 coats, both sides even the side that was never gonna be visible, I still turned it over and painted that side because I need to complete everything. It's got to be covered in paint. So once that was done, I then took some of my Extreme Sheen paint and I used the Obsidian and I painted the entire top of the snake. In fact, I covered every visible surface with the Obsidian, the Extreme Sheen. Obsidian, the obscene scene. Oh lordy. I covered the whole thing. And then once it dried, I went in on the belly of the snake and I added some of the champagne gold and a little bit of the antique bronze. Oh, and I painted the inside of the mouth with Garnet. Still the Extreme Sheen, so it's nice and shiny, but it's a very deep, sinister red. Before I baked it, I took a razor blade straight edge and I cross-hatched the whole thing to kind of give it the illusion of scales. If I were to do this over again, I would have started several weeks earlier, but I would have loved to have made the shoots on the snake and the actual scales. I'll try it someday. I'm not going to disassemble this piece of art. I couldn't with the amount of glue that's on there now, but I am going to try to make a more realistic snake. And this time I'm going to condition my clay. Part 3, Iron Butterfly. So I grabbed a few of these little cutout things from Hobby Lobby. Far, far too small for the scale, so I didn't use it at all, but I thought I'd show you because sometimes you fail. So what I did is I grabbed instead, on my next trip, I don't even want to tell you how many trips to Hobby Lobby this took me. If you're a Hobby Lobby basher, listen, I worked there twice. They always treated me well. I don't have any problems with it, so. In the wood aisle, there are bags of these little pieces of wood cutouts, and you've got teardrops and ovals and circles. So in this photo here, I have got 2 of these together. I've got a bigger one and a smaller one to try to get the shape of a butterfly wing. And I painted them black completely with the Amsterdam black, and then I super glued them together when I was happy with the arrangement. So that's what you're seeing here is the top wings are 2 of these together super glued, and then the bottom wing I used the smaller size and just have it here. Well, what you're looking at is this, but I ended up moving the bottom wing to this angle. But these are serving as my armatures under the clay because I didn't want to make the clay itself so thick, and I also just wanted to give it a little bit extra hold. So that's why I used the wood underneath. Here's a view, an aerial view. May I tell you, Rapid Fuse is the best super glue I have ever used. I love this stuff. Obviously on that one wing, I used way more than I should have. This silver clay is Primo Sculpey. This stuff's great. Fortunately, I conditioned it because I needed it really flat, and I used a rolling pin to do that. I then draped it over these things, my armatures, and formed it. Those little tabs that you're seeing, I wanted to make into longer parts of the wing, just a nice detail on the wing. I found these gears, some in the paper crafts aisle, some in the wood crafts. The wood ones I painted. The metal ones, obviously, I didn't. And I'm just trying a few arrangements to try to make this as steampunky as possible. Here, I have taken the top part of the wing, laid it face down on the clay, and the clay is very, very thin. I would say it's about 2 millimeters. And that sharp line you're seeing is where I cut it with the X-Acto knife. And then I start to form the clay around that armature. Form it around that side first. I was kind of pulling it up over, and then when I flipped it over, I used a brush, like a very stiff bristled but soft brush, go figure, and kind of jammed it down into that recess where it stepped from the top wing to the bottom wing. So it fit really, really nicely. Part 4, the frame job. Yet another trip to Hobby Lobby to get this frame. It's square. It had this risen piece of metal that was really easy to take apart. I did not like the colors. Here I am staining it. Minwax wood finish. Now those of you who are woodworkers are probably asking, did she not knock down the frame? No, I didn't. I did not sand it. I did not refinish it at all. I just stained right on top of it. Why? I liked the weird splotchy organic look. Yeah, actually I did. I thought it added to the overall ambiance of the piece. Ambiance. It's December in Wisconsin, so I am spray painting in my house. Not great, not ideal, but hey, a big old cardboard box works well for it. I am using Rust-Oleum Ultra Cover Paint and Primer in black, because everything has to be black. Part 5, assembly. Here's a random shot. My art room became completely overfull and crowded with all of the Christmas gifts I was making, so I took over our kitchen. My husband's really tolerant. Here we have the final painting, the painted ouroboros, and the butterfly, which in this scene is baked, and the gears that are on it, I baked right into the clay. I pushed them in, put it all in the oven. The body is a wire-wrapped tiger eye pendant. I end up building a little armature for that too, but I didn't film that. It's really, I put the wings together, smushed it all with a little cylinder of clay in there so I could get the right shape, pushed the jewel down in, and then carved away until I had a body that accommodated where the wings connected, both the upper and the bottom at the angles that they needed to be at with the stone in the middle. That's actually the very last thing I did because that was one of the more complicated pieces to get the wings at the angle in the clay all mixed together. So everything had to be baked, everything had to be ready to go before I made that little body part and then put the stone in it. Here I'm varnishing the painting with Liquitex gloss varnish. Part of me really wanted to leave it matte as is, but ultimately I really like the shine and it protects it, makes it last longer. Who doesn't want that? All right, here we have the butterfly. It is baked and now I am gluing on gears. This was probably the most difficult, just trying to get all the gears to go where I wanted them to fit inside the wings and really give it the look I wanted. Once I glued the majority of the pieces on, I assembled what I thought would be the final piece. I put some chain around in the frame just to see if I would like it, and I did. So, hey, Gorilla Glue Clear Grip. This stuff is awesome. Way, way, way better than E6000. That shit, excuse me. That stuff stinks to high hell. Gorilla Glue doesn't smell nearly that bad. It only stinks to like sewage treatment plant level. The frame is now assembled. You're gonna see a few things here have changed. The inside of the frame has now got a red tint to it, and the metal part, which has been reinserted, has two very different tonal variations. I needed it to be matte, and I thought of a couple of different ways I would try to do it. I would love to have had the time to order some black 3.0 or 2.0 or whatever it's called, because it's ultra black and it's ultra matte. I couldn't get it in time. So I ended up using chalk paint, and I used the chalk paint and I brushed it over the spray paint to get that very, very matte finish. It's not a perfect paint job. Again, I kind of liked how texturally different it looked. I liked the variation. I liked that it wasn't perfect. It really fit the end piece. I used Arteza in Bordeaux Red, and I painted it right over the stain. And here's the chalk paint I used. This chain is Metal Gallery in kind of an antique bronze color that I thought really set off the different colors I've used in the entire piece so far. And again, my new best friend, Gorilla Clear Grip. That's what it looks like. There's the chain glued on. Just by the nature of the chain, it twists. Again, I love the organic look of that. This side I have yet to glue down, just so you could see it. Side note, when working with a lot of super glue, don't absentmindedly reach down and pet your cat. It's a bad thing. Not that I know from experience. Or do I? Poor Jack. Meow. Here's the butterfly nearly assembled. You'll notice it's a little bit different because I've shaded the edges to make it look a little bit more realistic, more 3D. It's supposed to be an iron butterfly, but because I used the gray clay, the silver clay, to stand out from the painting, I used a little bit more of that obsidian paint that I pretty much used an entire 2-ounce bottle, and I shaded the edges to give it that 3D look. I tried out some gemstones. Possibly cool, except my friend who was receiving this is kind of a dude's dude, and I thought that was maybe just a little too much bling for him, so I ended up using these tiny, teeny little keys instead. I'm now ready for the final assembly. I have clamped the painting to the frame, and I used probably half the thing of Gorilla Glue. It is never, ever moving. The butterfly is ready for final assembly. And at this point, I didn't film anymore. Here is the final. This is all glued, this is done. This is photos and slow-mos of this just before I gave it to my friend for Christmas. So, the final butterfly. What's different? You will see that I have added some very, very tiny little wires. It's this stuff on a wire. I think I used that color. Don't hold me to it, but I'm pretty sure that's the one I used that matched the best. I cut teeny tiny little pieces, glued them on in a line, super glued them, held them down with a toothpick, took the toothpick once they were dry and bent them over the edge like that, and then super glued them again. I did that in several places. I added some wire here and there to kind of make it look like the gears actually do something. I drew in a couple of runes. Go ahead and research them if you want to know what they mean, but I'm not going to tell you. I did add a few rhinestones just here and there, just for a little bit of shine and interest inside the gears and a few other places. You'll see little dots of 3 on the inside of the wings. That came from a strip of jewels that you get in the paper crafting aisle, black jewels on glue, and then I just cut teeny tiny pieces and affixed them in place. I cut a longer piece of wire for the antenna, twisted it around, super glued it in place, and then I twisted the extensions around a pencil, well, a pen, not anything with edges, something smooth like a pen. And then I curled just the very ends with the tweezer. They're not glued to any place but the wire loop on the pendant, and that's why I left the pendant intact. I added a few more jewels and gems here and there, a few more gears just to really make it pop. And I'll tell you, the wire is what completed it. It looked good before, but once I put those wires on, it's just boom, totally different level. I added some wire down the long part of the lower wing. I still don't know what that's called. Somebody just please write me in the comments. And the lower part of the butterfly, I glued the 2 lower wings and the armature of the body together, and as one piece, I glued that whole thing onto the painting before I added the wings. For the snake, I took the toothpicks that I had used, cut them down, painted them white, and then painted them silver, and then super glued them up in the jaw. I super glued where the tail broke when I baked it. It broke inside the mouth, so I re-glued that to the mouth of the snake before I glued it all onto the painting. So it doesn't exactly wrap around, it lays over it in places, but that's good because it really doesn't show too many gaps. And the gaps that did show, I just filled with glue that really doesn't show up in the final product. The butterfly wing that is up on the snake is the most precariously placed. It is glued to the body and it is glued to the snake, and that's about it. So time will tell. I don't think I could be more pleased with the colors that I used. They all work together so harmoniously, and that little pop of red around the frame and that Swarovski crystal that I put in the snake's eye and the red inside its mouth just really set it off. All in all, this project probably, though I didn't keep track of time, in my best estimate, probably took me about, we'll say 25 to 30 hours, and the most of it was arranging the gears on the butterfly, just because I was really meticulous about that. The butterfly was the center, that is the focal point, that is really what I wanted to pop. So that's where I spent the majority of my time. If I had done this before and I had had a better idea about how they're all gonna fit together and how to fasten them, all of that, maybe it would have not taken quite as long, but it doesn't matter. The whole process was fun, and I think that I could go on to make many more iron butterflies or steampunk butterflies in the future and do a lot of very different things with them, and maybe even a lot more rhinestones. Why not? Always rhinestones. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've got some ideas. I hope you've learned something, and I hope to see you again. Please like and subscribe to my channel. As you can see, I do a lot of paint pouring if you're looking at any video on my channel prior to this, but there's a lot of other things that I do and plan on doing in the future, including more clay work, resin work, more paint, mixed media. And also, I mentioned at the very beginning, I'm a musician. I'm putting out a second album soon, so there'll be some of that coming up too. Please look in the description box below. I've got all of my links there for all of my social media. If you want to see some of my painting videos, check the info card above. I think there's an eye floating someplace on the screen. Not this kind of eye, you know, the info eye. The eye that is dotted, not the eye that sees. Though when you think about it, the eye of Sauron kind of looks like an eye that's dotted, doesn't it? Bye now.